Hello and welcome to an all new episode of the Up the Coast podcast. As always, I am your host, Tyler, and joining me today, we're going to recap the second round of the NCAA tournament, those four ACC games. He is the great Rocco Miller of the Bracketeer. And for those of you watching on YouTube, Rocco, you really got dressed up for the occasion here, but thank you for joining me.
Just another Monday for us here, Tyler. Always good to be back on with you. Getting ready for a big couple of days. I'll be at San Jose starting Wednesday morning. Opted out of Houston, not to be a backpedaler. I don't like being that way. But I just figured with Nebraska, unrelated to the show here, going to Houston, the media presence was going to be a little overwhelming, and I might not be guaranteed the seat that I prefer. So. I'm just going to stick around here. We got a couple surprise teams coming to, at least one surprise team coming to San Jose. So
Yeah, you could have had Miami there, but
that's what we wanted.
we'll
That's
get
what
to
we
that
wanted.
one. And
Yep.
it would have been such an advantageous matchup against Texas too. They could have had a shot at the Elite Eight, but alas, that was the kind of weekend it was in the ACC. And I guess we can just go in order, probably starting with the least painful of the three losses, with Louisville falling to Michigan State, a game where the Cardinals were properly an underdog without Michael Brown Jr. They managed to hang around. I think we can give them credit for keeping it a competitive game for about 36 minutes there, but yet it still feels like this was a very winnable game that Louisville let get away from them. Although Ryan Conwell certainly did what he could in his final game, 21 points, 7 of 15 shooting, 4 assists. It just felt so early in that game that they were only winning if he could will them through.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way, and a lot of his points came from either mid-range or downtown. Of course, he hit five threes, and I think that just kind of speaks to the larger story of the Spartans completely owning the interior, out rebounding Louisville by seven. But of course, the free throw disparity was a big difference, as it usually is with Michigan State in March. Getting to the line, it wasn't completely outrageous, but it was still 19 free throw attempts to six. The fact that Louisville could only generate six foul shots speaks to kind of the size disadvantage they had at multiple positions. And yeah, Conwell, to me, and I think it was quite clear the last several months. It started maybe back in that trip when I had them here in the Bay Area, when Mikael Brown really stopped, being a regular, and Conwell took over as the alpha for the team. Little like a nice showing from Adrian Woolley. My one of the guys I liked a lot out of Kennesaw State got to call three of his games in Canada, and just an amazing freshman at the CUSA level. But I think he really struggled throughout the year to adjust. Had a nice game with 17 points in this one. But of course, his whole career so far, he's dealt with cramping. He had to leave multiple times with cramps during the game. And I think that hurt a little bit because they couldn't get Hadley going. McNeely was a little inconsistent, and really not a whole lot, minus Khalifa, who's a whole different chess piece off the bench, to be second fiddle alongside with Conwell and really threaten the Spartans.
Yeah, and Louisville came out strong. Conwell hit a couple of shots. Zugris played really one of the best games of his season in this one. Scored a couple of layups early, and then Conwell takes that idiotic offensive foul for his second right
Mhm.
before that under 16 media timeout, and they took him out. For the 6 minutes he ended up sitting, and that was where Michigan State really started to assert themselves. I mean, it's been a problem. You mentioned those Bay Area games. That was when it became so evident that if they don't have Brown, Conwell, or Khalifa on the court at any given time, they have no one who can generate any playmaking whatsoever. And the offense kind of sputtered out. They never found it again. Isaac McNeely just couldn't get going in the way he did in the South Florida game. And that's a huge problem when we had the normal Louisville perimeter defense in this one. There was just no resistance. I feel like Michigan State remaining under 80 was mostly just a lack of shot selection from their own guys, and Kohler and Cooper were happy to take some jumpers that they didn't have to settle for. Jeremy Fears was just running around basically finding whatever pass he wanted to. He ended up with 16 assists. And it just seems like if they had run pick and roll with Fears and Carr every single time, they would have scored on every possession. I don't really see what the Louisville defense would have done in this one, but yeah, I mean, this was really just a perfect microcosm of the whole season.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean, I think Louisville fans want to see a guy like Frew get a little bit of a more confident style of play. He's shown so many flashes. Like, he did have 5 offensive rebounds in this game, which is awesome. But there was just inconsistencies in terms of his efficiency. He had multiple turnovers. So if he could take some sort of leap from junior to senior year, that would really help a team like this where. I saw it at Florida with Chinyelu, right? He was a really nice prospect at Washington State. His first year at Florida, he was a outstanding defender, and this year he put his whole package together. If Sanandra Frew can do that type of jump next year, that's really the piece Louisville's missing, I think, on the front line. Ali Khalifa is 7 foot 250, and of course he'll be gone next year. But like just such an inside outside pick and pop guy not really banging on the interior full time by any means. So that's that part of it. You kind of need that physicality in the way college basketball materialized at the top of the sport this year. You look at any of the top teams, they have a rim attack solution, whereas Louisville was predicated mostly on catch and shoot, elite shooters, but also a couple guys that can drive and kick like Conwell. And obviously, Mikael Brown being the great shooter he is, just not having him available really kind of killed the whole overall picture. But I just don't know, even with Brown, how far Louisville could have got based on the fact that they were limited at the rim.
Yeah, one thing that didn't help was Case and Pryor just never properly recovering from the torn ACL. We'll never forget those three
Yep.
weeks before he got hurt last year, but shout out
Yep.
to him who inexplicably got in for 1 minute, attempted a 6 foot floater that landed about halfway from the basket, bounced out of bounds, went to a timeout. We never saw him again. But
Wow.
the the just overwhelming kind of summation of the Louisville season. I can steal a tweet from our pal Sam Fetterman here. Against top 40 Ken Pom teams, they were 3-9 this year. Every time they played a top 20 Ken Pom opponent, they were held below 1.06 points per possession. They went 0-6 in those games. That was Louisville this year, and this kind of just wrapped a bow on it. My only other comment, I was up in Buffalo for these games.
Yeah.
First time Louisville won an NCAA tournament game in over a decade. Their fan showing was pitiful. They only filled half their fan section. They completely engulfed by the Michigan State, and even St. Louis fans there. And I don't understand it. I guess they just kind of gave up on the season.
Yeah, that is interesting because they do have one of the more inspiring, aggressive fan bases, obviously, especially when they feel confident. But yeah, that could be a part of it. I think they are also very knowledgeable and realistic fans and really just saw the draw, going into the South Florida game. I give them credit for at least the way they came out in the first round, really taking it to South Florida. Took away defensively the Bulls like top two or three strengths in the first half and built a huge lead. They got out of that round, and a lot of people picked South Florida. So maybe even Louisville fans themselves didn't even expect to win that game. So to get to Michigan State, lose to a respectable team, and just move straight into off-season mode, I'm assuming without, living in Louisville and being around it daily, I'm assuming that's kind of about the ceiling they expected of themselves based on the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't expect them to get out of that game. So
Right.
I may or may not have assumed that South Florida was going to take it to them. And if Louisville hadn't been red hot, as we talked about on Thursday's pod, then they may very well have fallen to the Bulls there.
Yeah.
But
The Bulls, if the Bulls had maybe 2 more minutes to work with as well, maybe they outlast them in the end, but they did run out of time. So
yeah, it just felt like they were never going to make that last three. But that's history
true.
now. The
Yeah.
second game on Saturday, Duke badly struggling against TCU. It was 42-42 with 15 minutes to play. And it's not often that you have one moment in a game where you can go back and look at, wow, this is absolutely where it flipped. Isaiah Evans scores an and one layup that was good for Duke's momentum, but so much more importantly, it was the fourth foul on Xavier Edmonds of TCU. All their big guys were in foul trouble at the time, and it just felt like the Horned Frogs lost their edge from that point on. And the score reflects it. They lose 39 to 16 the rest of the way. Duke finally got humming. Cam Boozer was unstoppable to close it out. And yeah, and we just got to start there. For me, it's that Edmonds play that changed the whole game. But what did you see?
Oh yeah, I mean the whole way the game was officiated, and it boiled up to that moment, no doubt, and we could point back to that as a clear, this is a great game to Duke's got full control moment. But I felt like, what, much earlier, I think before that even happened, I had tweeted out that Duke was outscoring TCU 20-3 at the line. It's, for a guy that's watched a ton of March Madness tournaments over the years, it's no surprise if Duke or Carolina or Kansas or Kentucky or even Michigan State win the free throw battle, regardless of personnel. Now, I know naturally Duke's bigger than most teams, especially TCU. So it's not surprising that they have the free throw edge, but to have it in such a way. Now TCU got, I think, 6 of their 10 attempts after the game was over, so the final box score is a little misleading now. But in the moment, it was quite clear because TCU had a much higher field goal shooting percentage during that part of the game, and of course they let that moment, for better or worse, get the best of them, and it was over after that, right? TCU never really strung together many baskets at all, let alone any kind of run that was needed to get back in it. And so, unfortunately, a really good effort from TCU's perspective is gone by the wayside and probably forgotten about by everybody except for TCU people. For Duke, it's another day at the office. I remember being at the game against Cal this year here, and it was kind of not. I won't. It wasn't the same because it wasn't a technical or a big moment like that, but it was an awesome first half. Cal really brought it, and in the second half, basically there was zero flow. Duke just got to the line over and over and over again, and end up winning by 18 or whatever it was. So. Minus the technical part of it, it definitely felt like the same type of slow death for TCU.
Yeah, and just kind of coincidentally, the one thing that happened right after that Edmonds foul, and a huge piece of that run, is they started to find the Gungba Cam Boozer high-low game. And you think about some of the subpar performances that Boozer's had this year, the vast majority of the Siena game until he started just getting fouled over and over again. The Pitt game back in back in February when Boozer really struggled the first 30 minutes. Those are the games Gungba was missing. And you quickly become reminded that the only guys on this team that can actually throw an entry pass are Hemenya, who they don't trust to do it, Caden Boozer, and Gungba. And so all of a sudden, without Gungba out there, Cam Boozer just kind of can't get properly set up on the block unless it's his own brother running a little two-man action with him. And they started to find the Gungba passing piece again those last 15 minutes. They missed him bad. And it kind of remember how good Duke can be and how important he really is. Like he's basically their second point guard in a weird, weird way.
Yeah, it's a good observation. He only went 13 minutes in this game, but they were all important, right? I think the majority of those were when the game was in the balance and they were sparring with TCU. And you're right, Caden Boozer is such a important ball creation and offense creation point guard, and obviously pass first. So, with him being really kind of having that whole weight on his shoulders, it changes the dynamic a little bit as we saw against Siena. Not more than a little bit. It's more like, okay, how do we really set up shop here? And it also makes an impact. If I think the Gongba factor is even more important defensively, because we saw Siena score at will, a team, several levels below Duke in college basketball. So that defensive piece continues to be the part that I continue to focus on for Duke, and I think in general the NCAA tournament, the amount of stops that you can generate or turkeys if you can get 3 in a row usually goes a long ways into building the separation or ultimately getting the victory. And with them basically going without Caleb Foster, probably the rest of the way, we'll see how that shakes out.
Shire
Uh,
doesn't want you to think that.
well, after getting duped by SMU, right? Like who are we to believe anymore? But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But I think, Caleb Foster was such a huge part in holding Michigan to 63. And from here on out, Duke's going to be playing those types of games. St. John's is next, and St. John's is going to be an absolute war. And I'm not sold that Duke's going to be able to hold up for all 40 minutes. Obviously, the way the game is officiated is absolutely paramount for Duke's overall result. They could beat them without a heavy whistle, but it gets a lot harder, I think.
Yeah, that one's going to be really fascinating to see what Edge of a Four is able to do against Duke. But just some quick stats I wanted to hit on this one before we close out this game. Cam Boozer, after a bad first half, and this is the safest bet in college basketball now that he's going to come back awesome in the second, close out with 19, 11, and 4. The Boozer twins and Patrick Gungba combined for 13 of Duke's 17 assists. No one else had more than one. Just some fascinating stuff that I think speaks to why this offense was so bogged down that
He only
first
took
3 quarters of the game.
Yeah, and he only took one shot in the first half. And that was fascinating as well. And I think that goes to your larger point about establishing entry pass and TCU's plan to deny. They had him doubled quite often from my observation in the first half, and obviously great second half adjustments by Shire and that staff at Duke. They don't get enough credit. I think they actually do a really good job schematically to because when you're Duke, you're getting everybody's best shot. I also thought TCU was very underrated. Coming into the game in general or the tournament, however you want to look at it, because you have to remember they were 8-2 in their last 10 games before this game, and came off of a nice clutch win over Ohio State. Xavier Edmonds was the hero. And then, of course, getting him all frustrated in early foul trouble was a huge key to the final result. Like he fouls out in this game. Obviously, like you said, the technical a big factor. And this game had the potential to be extremely dangerous, more kind of like the Iowa-Florida game, but never got there because of the way the second half is obviously due to the one big moment, but it's also due to the adjustments Duke made at halftime.
So Miami and Purdue, this one I have like triple the amount of notes on this game than on any of the other three. This was so endlessly fascinating. I think we have to start. I feel like the number one piece of this game is that in the power forward matchup, Trey Kaufman-Renn just simply outplayed Malik Reneau. And if your best guy is going to lose his individual battle to a superior team, you're probably just not going to win. Kaufman-Renn was unbelievable in this game.
Yeah, he was, and I think the focus for Miami was clearly Braden Smith. I mean, he played a horrible
They
first
did a good
half.
job on him.
Yeah,
So
four turnovers in the first half, one for six. Really couldn't get anything going, a hit for himself, but that left Kaufman-Renn available with a lot of one-on-one situations and space. You see how much space TKR had to operate with. That was a big difference in terms of him being able to just kind of dominate. But then also you look at Fletcher Lawyer. How many catch and shoots did he get? Way too many. You can't give an elite shooter like him that many good looks. He's going to make you pay every time. And ultimately, at the end, that's what buried Miami. I thought the first half game plan, and they did it mostly throughout the game, actually, was to pick up a little bit of full court pressure, at least represent full court pressure. Shelton Henderson, after a made basket, was constantly guarding the inbound passer. And I thought that that was a good strategy to maybe potentially get to a point where Purdue would wear down and get exhausted from moving without the ball. But the biggest issue I thought was on the back end of that, with TKR example being the quintessential one in this game. There wasn't enough accountability on the Miami defense to have answers for that next phase of Purdue offense. So without a hot shooting night, Miami really wouldn't have had a chance based on the way that they executed on the back half of that represented pressure.
Yeah, the Purdue Wings went a combined 8 for 10 from three in this game. People were declaring it the Fletcher Lawyer game about 10 minutes in. He ended up with 24 points on just seven shot attempts. The only reason it never got there is because eventually those open shots started going CJ Cox's way. He hit a couple before that unfortunate injury, although the fact that he was up running is certainly a good sign. It seemed a lot worse in the moment, so good for that young man. But yeah, they kept Braden Smith in check. They forced him into probably his sloppiest game of the season with the eight turnovers. It was just funny that we ended up with the two stars both playing poorly in this one, and
Yeah.
Purdue got forced into those wing threes that they hit. Miami got forced into those mid-range jumpers that they did not. And Craig Bowers, when he came on here for the preview, said Miami's going to have to hit their mid-ranges. I went back into the game, into the shot map. Trey Donaldson 2 for 6 from 8 feet to the three-point line. True Washington 1 for 3. Now Shelton Henderson was 2 for 2. And Henderson's athleticism caused Purdue an unbelievable amount of problems. He ended up with 18 points, 8 rebounds, season high 4 assists. He almost won this game for Miami, but they just didn't get enough from Renew and from Donaldson in what is now going to be their final game.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, that was at least those first five or six guys from Miami. That was also an issue, like really no bench at Miami. They're going to pick up full court pressure most of the game and not really have any subs to work with. That might have played a factor in the field goal percentage difference between the first half at 52% and the second half at 37%. 15% drop off in shooting. They only made one three in the second half. I know they had several good looks from what I recall. And yeah, and they couldn't capitalize on a really important injury to Purdue with CJ Cox going down, who played 18 minutes, but they knew heading into the rest of the game, once he went down, he would probably not be back. Miami just has to get a little sharper, I think, with on-the-fly adjustments, within their staff. Jai Lucas did a great job building this roster. I thought they were awesome in the way they closed out against Missouri the first game. But playing the Purdue's of the world, the very well coached, the very fundamentally sound group that they are, you have to keep them rattled and on their toes to really have an edge against them. And I love the way Miami came out because I thought they did that. Like I said, the four turnovers by Smith early were uncharacteristic. He finishes the game with eight, 8 turnovers for Smith. So they did well on him, but it was like there had to be more to it than just that. And Lawyer and TKR just crushed them in the end.
Yeah, I do want to just close on Shelton Henderson here because he was amazing.
Yep.
Scrolling the ESPN big board, he is not in their top 100 for the draft, which is just legitimately bonkers. So after this game, I was leaning this way anyway, but I look forward to ranking him in my top 10 ACC players next year
Yeah,
because
I mean,
the
we'll
leap is
see.
coming.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there might be some people that get in his ear to go test the waters this year, and that you see a couple guys every year where you're not even thinking of them even right now for the NBA draft prospect, and then all of a sudden they catch a few eyeballs and everything changes, right? Like so, who's our buddy that was supposed to go to Duke, and then he ends up
Cedric
being
Coward.
Coward, yeah, the former Coug. Cedric Coward. So I'm not saying he's him. He's still so young, but look at that physique, man. 6'6", 240. He's built like a linebacker. He's got so much potential. I mean, he's barely tapping into the art of the possible with his basketball future. So, and what a clean game, 9 for 11. I would love to see him. Like, I just feel like he's capable of even more. Is that crazy to say? Because I saw him energy wise, like he's very good with his body movements. He's very good with his awareness and knowing where to be on the floor. But he also just almost looks like he's barely sweating. And maybe that's just the kind of player he is. I don't know. But I felt like if he just went balls to the wall, uh, effort, relentless effort, maybe he'll never be that kind of player. But if he did, like he would be absolutely unstoppable in every facet of the game, rebounding, assisting, defending. obviously scoring. So so excited about him. I had a ton of excitement about him in the summer. I felt like not nearly enough people were talking about him. I did Miami previews. I think we did one and several other places as well where he wasn't even being mentioned. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? This guy might be the most important player on the team. Obviously, that became Trey Donaldson and Malik Reneau, but yeah. And on the flip side, now that I mentioned Reneau, I know Indiana fans were not surprised to see him have another rough game against Purdue.
That was a funny subplot to it. I kind of forgotten that that's where he was since it's been such a long season, but
They reminded us.
yeah. Oh yeah. That it, it's a nice little extra kick to a fun day for Purdue fans. But yeah, I mean Henderson, this was the perfect freshman season. He comes in, he gets to be a true role player, find his footing on defense, and now next year, depending on who they can find with their top dollar in the portal, he'll either be their best or second best player, and he can try to become a more refined scorer. But I don't understand why he's not in like the 30s on draft boards. I'll have to
Yeah,
have Ersin Demir on here in the coming weeks to talk about that. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be a Cedric Coward like Rise, who in hindsight, if he had gone to Duke, they would be the runaway, unquestioned, dominant favorite to win the national title right now. But it probably makes the next 2 weeks more fun that Duke doesn't have Cedric Coward.
makes sense. Yeah, no, we'll see. It's interesting right now with where Duke's going. But yeah, with Miami, it's a little frustrating because, like I said, I was hopeful to see them up front in person. But Purdue is just one of those programs. It's been this way for at least last year and this year, to where their floor is so high. If you don't come out and do something to punch them in the mouth or do something unique to slow them down or just completely out athlete them, they're gonna pretty much win every time. And I thought Miami actually had the pieces to do the out athleting here, and I just think the adjustments and the effort weren't there for the full 40 minutes. The first half I was very pleased with, but they just didn't know how to kind of continue navigating.
So the last game here, Virginia, Tennessee, I think this is the one that really hurts for the ACC overall. A tough 7 point loss. I got to start though. Tester Ritter comes out. He's unbelievable in the second half, but Steve Lapis said over and over again early in the game, well, Virginia's struggling because they don't have anyone they can establish in the low post. Steve, I hate to have to ask whether or not you actually watched any film of DeRitter this season, but I get it because those first three halves of the weekend, he was nowhere to be seen. He was out there just doing pure cardio, and in the second half, Virginia finally woke up to the fact that he was going to have to be the guy who established themselves down low. He ends up with 22 points. He was utterly fantastic late in that game, but it just wasn't enough, and a couple of late charges just turned out to be nothing.
Yeah, I thought they fought really hard, first of all. Tennessee for a really important stretch during the middle of the second half started to flex some muscle and get on a roll. And I know they were up nine with about 9 minutes to go. Might be about as big as it got, but Virginia never backed down at that point. They kept fighting back. Dalen Hall had a tough driving layup, cut it to three with about 7 minutes left. Malik Thomas had some tough shots. And then another weird thing with him and Ryan Odom where he
Yeah.
was pulled out at the end. I thought that Tennessee was starting to flinch, for a stretch there late, where it just looked like Virginia was the older, more confident team, which is what I kind of expected going in. But Tennessee's clearly got more talent. I don't think there's any arguing that with Nate Bent being the X factor and so many other like just long, athletic wingspan guys for the Vols. But what a great matchup it was. The official review, of course, I think was the hot button item here. Could have completely changed the game. The ball, Tennessee throws it off their own guy's head. I think it went off Gillespie's head, and doesn't look like anybody else touched it. I think it was Dalen Hall behind him. I was at a place where there was no sound on. We had some music going, but I don't know what the ref actually said. Maybe you can help me there. But I still they showed the replay, I want to say at least 10 times. Seemed like a lot more. And I still don't know how that ends up being Tennessee's ball. But it clearly flipped the game because then from there it goes from 1 point to 3 points, and then they extend, and it's over. So, you just wonder what happens if Virginia retains possession, and they might have the lead after that. So those are just some initial thoughts I had.
So I think Lapis and Sterator had a long discussion during that out of bounds call, and I think
Okay.
they eventually landed in the ref's logic place of you just couldn't definitively say that Hall didn't touch it. And
I disagree.
Virginia gets screwed by the this is my take at this point now, where they get screwed by the bad call on the floor. Because if they call that Virginia ball initially in Tennessee challenges, there's no way in hell they win the challenge. I you almost like needed the overhead replay because you could squint and say, oh, maybe the just the way the ball crossed in the camera angle, you could make a case that Hall had touched it, but it there was no movement of the finger, there was no change of the trajectory. It was just the layer of where the camera was located. You couldn't 100% say he didn't. You could probably only get to 98%. And I don't know, that almost felt like there needed to be a discussion about how it's adjudicated because of how that big moment went where if they overturn it, are Tennessee fans really that mad about it?
No, no. I mean, I was at a place where there was several people watching the game, and Tennessee, Virginia, no matter who everybody was rooting for, the whole place agreed. It's pretty clear he didn't touch the ball. And if there was another camera needed, you're playing in the building of the Philadelphia 76ers. What bigger building do you need for more cameras? I mean, you should have every camera under the sun at a building like that, where there's events there basically every day, whether it's hockey, basketball, or whatever, right? So I don't understand some of that, but I do feel for Virginia in the moment. They had other opportunities to climb back in, didn't do it. So it's not like it completely lost. It was all lost right then and there, but it really felt like a deflating moment. We all had to sit around and think about it for multiple minutes based on the length of the review. And then it felt like the game hurried up and Tennessee closed it out, and it almost even less time than it took to review the one play. And I think that's what makes it just sting extra is the amount of time we spent thinking about this one particular call. But it did have so much weight on it.
Yeah, the other one too was the Sam Lewis technical, and
Yep.
it is amazing how Virginia just decided they were going to play all the hits from Friday. Like the Wright State and the Tennessee game were the exact same game, and the only difference was Virginia was playing an inferior opponent in the first one and they pulled away. And
Yep.
against a much better Tennessee team, DeRitter would that was the only difference. DeRitter had that great last 10-minute close in the Tennessee game. It let them hang around. I guess the other one is Jakari White comes out, continues the fire from that Friday game, hits three of his first four shots, and then after that, Tennessee just decided they were simply taking him out at whatever cost. And it made the lineup decisions down the stretch so fascinating. Where you probably had to have Dallin Hall out there. He was the only playmaker they had in this game. Chance Mallory was the one guy playing well defensively on the perimeter, but they left Jakari White out there. Malik Thomas scored 12 points in 15 minutes, and I couldn't help but think back to New Year's Eve, the triple overtime epic against Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech.
Similar situation. Malik Thomas is playing great, and he's inexplicably just not out there overtime, double overtime. Someone, I think it was Dallin Hall, fouls out. He comes back in for the end of double and all of triple overtime, scores basically all of Virginia's points, and that may just be the great mystery of the Cavaliers season is why Ryan Odom lost faith in Malik Thomas in games where he was one of only two guys scoring and they desperately needed a couple extra buckets.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I think Virginia offensively, I trusted them to generate great offense, whether it was playing through Malik Thomas, playing through DeRitter, playing through a little, getting Hall and White going on the outside. Those guys are deadly threats. White goes just 2 for 9 from three yesterday. I think that was a little bit costly because he can be extremely deadly, as those of us know from the Summit League. But yeah, and Sam Lewis is a key player too. Like that showed up big time when he came back from his injury in the Wright State game. But I think the game really flipped. Again, I'm a little more defensive focused when there was a stretch where they brought in my boy Devin Tillis, who I love, but it was hard to watch because you can see Tillis a little stiff in his hips. Got completely obliterated by the athletes on the front line of Tennessee. I think that's when Tennessee hit like a 10-0 or a 12-0 run and built that thing up to 9 for the first time, made the game 60-51. They were just capitalizing on a little bit of stiff hips there, I thought, from Tillis. He was playing like a very good structural fundamental defense, but it just looked like NBA guys going up against an old time European pro. And and sometimes in basketball, there's just nothing you can do about it. And obviously, after that, Ryan Odom got him out of the game. Tough to see because I mean he was unbelievable at UC Irvine and such a key player at that level. But it just shows you like my God, like just what that was one of the moments of the weekend, and it happened to just be in this game where I just realized, the difference between some of these high level college basketball teams athletically, and the next cut of great players in college basketball. Just the difference in the way they can their fluid hips and their overall athleticism. There are several levels to that, and if you're not playing in some sort of scheme zone or double team hedge to try to cover that up, and you're just letting them go one on one, it can show up in an ugly way. And I thought that happened for that stretch of the game where Tennessee really opened it up.
Yeah, I amen in that second half when he finally realized that Virginia had a 6'3" guy on him for most of the time,
Yeah.
was almost breathtaking at certain points. Now, he had a couple of idiotic mistakes, turnovers, defensive lapses that almost cost them the game, but they don't win that game without his size and just the dominating power of really mostly of Okpara while Estrella was stuck in foul trouble. Tennessee ended up winning the rebounding battle by 4. We knew that was going to be a huge key. Virginia was winning most of the game. Uh, but in the end, the Volunteers really just were the more physically imposing team.
They were, yeah, and the more athletic team, honestly. Like if we rolled the balls out in the middle of LA Fitness, um, I'm probably looking at that Tennessee team and taking them, especially with if Gillespie's playing within himself. I think there's been a couple games where he's kind of lost his grip on the game or just couldn't be as effective as you would like as a volunteer supporter. But only having 3 turnovers actually isn't that bad for him. He shot the ball decently, 6 assists. They had 20 assists as a team, Tyler, and Virginia had 12. Like, so many of their baskets were assisted. 20 of 34 were assisted. So it was really clean, a really clean game by Tennessee offensively, especially during the parts of the game where they took control. And ultimately, they did earn the win. It was just unfortunate to see Virginia's comeback bid get so impacted by one lengthy review that didn't go their way.
Yeah, they may not have scored anyway, but
Yeah,
um
we'll never know. I don't want to take anything away from Tennessee, but yeah,
yeah. So we'll wrap it up here. 3 coaching vacancies in the ACC. We could just hit some news here super quick. Georgia Tech hires Troy head coach Scott Cross. To me, this is just like a perfect B plus. Guy one state over, was decent at a terrible job at UT Arlington for a long time. Goes to Troy, 2 NCAA tournaments, 1 Sun Belt regular season title. It's not sexy. I don't think, doesn't seem like Georgia Tech's going to give a lot of money. Jeff Goodman was complaining about that over the weekend, but just a solid, albeit unexciting hire.
yeah. I don't know what Georgia Tech fans expect right now. Obviously going through a few years with Stoudemire that just went sideways each year. Anything's probably better for the time being. Scott Cross, a guy I've loved for years, all those years at Arlington. Really just getting upset in the conference tournament was the big theme. No bigger year than 2012 when they went 15-1 in the Southland and didn't win the tournament. They had the 11th best offense in the country, or sorry, the 11th fastest offense in the country and got to the foul line with relentless abandon, top five in the nation. But they end up, making one of the worst mistakes in mid-major the whole last 20 years, in my opinion, in letting him go. And Troy gets the fruits of that. Troy was nothing when they hired Scott Cross, kind of like where Georgia Tech is now. And if Georgia Tech is really going to stay in this financial situation, and in fact, this can change year to year. You got to keep that in mind. Like if you have a year with Scott Cross, whoever he's able to bring in with the resources, they're going to have to moneyball that to death. But if they can just build some momentum into next off season, the money can change quite a bit. You're in Atlanta, you're in a big city, tons of companies around that would love to get behind the Yellow Jackets. That number that Jeff Goodman brought up could triple, could quadruple. We've seen that other places this year versus last year, and it could go the other way too. It could go the way of, I'm from Washington, right? So I know the amount of money spent on the Huskies this year was somewhere around 15 million, and now the main investor from that won't be back next year, and the money's going to be drastically different for them. It could go both ways. So that's the era we're in. Power conference basketball, it's all about the Benjamins in terms of what kind of talent you can get. But I think from Georgia Tech's point of view, it's smart for them to get a guy that has started from the ground and built it up, which is exactly what he had to do at Troy. Their first year, they were 293rd in KenPom. Their second year, they're 305th. And then after that, they never had a losing season in the Sun Belt, including two straight, tournament titles. This year, they won the double championship. And of course, there's Waffle Houses all over Atlanta, which is the most important thing. If you've gotten to know Scott Cross at all, he has a whole Waffle House recruiting mentality. He will not recruit a player that was not near a Waffle House growing up because he wants down to earth players, down to earth people that can relate to all walks of life. And so that I think could resonate, could be a little different. Again, at a certain point in the ACC, you can't win, right? Without stars. Like you probably can't beat the Louisville, Duke, North Carolinas of the world without stars. But there's a lot of margin to gain in the fifth through from fifth place all the way down to the bottom of the league, as guys like Kyle Smith, really didn't have a lot of money to work with this year at Stanford, won a lot of games because he coaches his butt off and he finds good people to not only fill his staff but also play for him. And I think Scott Cross can bring that to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Thoughts on Syracuse hiring Jerry McNamara, because you end up with the double storm of the Brian Hodgson turning them down public leak, and then McNamara hangs around with Duke. And I think I came on the pod that night and just said, wow, congratulations. It seemed pretty inevitable at that point because that was always just going to be the excuse now that anyone who wants to look at only 2 years of head coaching experience, you can just point and say, hey, this guy hung around with Duke with a metro school. He's a legend at Syracuse. And yeah,
Well, first of all, let me just say this. I grew up loving Syracuse. I don't think a lot of people know that. They were my childhood team that I rooted for nationally. I grew up in Seattle, but Washington was always terrible back in, when I was little. So Syracuse it was, and Jerry McNamara was, older than me, obviously, and was forever and forever always will be a Syracuse icon for not only the national championship run and the six three-pointers in the first half of the national title game against Kansas, but also the year after when he went for 40 plus to beat BYU, and then they also, of course, beat Maryland in the second round. Just an unbelievable March Madness legend forever, and the six overtime win against UConn. There's just countless Jerry McNamara moments from when he played, and of course, his whole coaching career began on the bench with Jim Boeheim. You saw him on TV all the time for seems like over a decade. Where okay, when's Jerry McNamara going to finally get a job somewhere? Because he's been an assistant at Syracuse forever. So he finally gets the Siena job. And again, he's got a lot to prove. Like there's skepticism from the coaching industry because everybody knows he's a big name. But how much can he coach X's and O's wise? His first year at Siena, he goes 14 and 18. They don't even reach 500 in the league. And this year, obviously it finished very strong and it was awesome to see the finish. Everything you just said is 100% true. But there were stretches this year that were very questionable. Like they finished 3-4 in their last seven, losing to Fairfield badly at the end of the year. And really got it going in the Metro Atlantic Conference tournament. Perhaps the Antonio Chandler situation was addition by subtraction, subtraction by addition. I don't want to say that wrong, but yeah, with Chandler being suspended late in the year, they actually kind of found themselves. It's funny how that can work out sometimes. But they win that tournament, and of course, give Duke the That's an unforgettable game for us. Like we never see a team as dominant as Duke struggle with a 16, and it happened in a big way. So Syracuse unwilling from the Syracuse administration side, unwilling to pivot away from the Boeheim era. I know they did talk to Brian Hodgson. Um, I think deep down they wanted to keep it in the family, and they take the plunge. In my opinion, probably too early. Like I don't think Jerry McNamara is qualified for the position. But we're in a different era, so it doesn't matter. Like all that old type of thinking doesn't matter anymore because, like I just said about Georgia Tech, it's quite the opposite for Syracuse. So, with Jerry McNamara as the head coach, you might see fundraising go from a projected maybe $6 million roster next year to like a $16 million roster next year because I'm telling you, Syracuse fans are crazy about this guy. They have a lot of rich alumni, a lot of successful alumni in New York City. And so his job from day one, the press conference I'm sure is coming soon, will be to raise money. And if he can successfully do that, he doesn't have to be a great coach. He can get Syracuse back to the tournament with the chops he has currently. I think it'd be wise for him to hire at least one older staff guy that can help him with running offense and defense and doing some scheme stuff, like all young coaches should do. But at the end of the day, Jerry McNamara is not that young anymore, and we'll see how it plays out. Like he does have a chance to succeed though, because money is just as important, at least to get to the tournament and have a good seed as being a good coach. Now, I think yesterday and the last couple of days proved you still need to be a damn good coach to advance far in the tournament, but you can get to the tournament just with money. That's for sure.
That's the whole thing. They're gonna need to be able to bring in more money for this to be a successful hire,
Yep.
or else otherwise you just hired an underqualified coach because he had deep ties to the school, which is exactly what you just did in Red Autry. And McNamara, the fact that he actually made an NCAA tournament automatically makes him more qualified than Autry ever was, but still, you're basically just going back down the same rabbit hole trying to not repeat the same mistakes. But last one, you got a name you like for Boston College because apparently they're interviewing like 30 people. And if it's not Eric Olin, which would be the obvious one of the candidates, and it doesn't seem like he is all that interested, then it really might just be dealer's choice as to who you like out of these other guys.
I think if they were able to get a guy like Eric Conkle, who I think talked to them from Tulsa, Tulsa's still playing in the NIT right now, that would be a big win for them. Any sitting head coach that's tasted portal success. Now, Conkle really struggled at Tulsa for 3 years. They were awful, but they finally got some resources and did a great job evaluating the portal. Had a good year this year, finished top 60, I think, in all the metrics, and of course now they're in the final eight of the NIT. That's one I think if they got a guy even at that level, that's a big win for BC. Otherwise, from BC's perspective, obviously Joey Gallo would be a home run. From Joey Gallo's perspective, that's the Merrimack head coach for those who are listening and may not know his name. Um, I don't think that's a great move for him. Boston College is quite clearly a school even further behind than Georgia Tech, the worst job in the league right now. And you need somebody, if you can't get somebody that's just a total fundraiser guy, you got to get somebody that's got rebuilding experience. And that's where I might even look at really low major guys that have started with no money and been successful, or even I don't know, like a Mike Magpayo. I know he's only been at Fordham one year, but he coached UC Riverside with nothing. no money at all, and got them into the top four of the Big West. Now he's coached Fordham 1 year and got them all the way in the top eight in 1 year. Like they had nothing going for them entering conference play. You need somebody like that that just does more with less, is the overall theme, I think. Or if they can land one of the bigger names, I guess Conco would be on that list. Maybe Luke Murray's name's been attached, if you can believe that, from UConn. I think any of those guys, and I would see Murray as more of a fundraiser, and obviously a guy who can coach a little bit. That would be a dream for BC. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know if there's a perfect answer.
Yeah, I mean, mine were either Matt Langle from Colgate, Brian Earl from William and Mary, two guys that have won a lot. It's
Yeah, I
just
just
god awful programs, but neither of them are even attached to this. It doesn't look like they're
I,
candidates.
yeah, and knowing Earl pretty well, I don't think he would be interested. I think those guys want to move to a, if they're going to move, they like where they work. If they're going to move, they want to move to a place that would be at least reasonably top half of their league. Boston College isn't that job. And so yeah, I think that explains those. I can't speak for Langle, but I know Langle's already turned down better jobs than this. So I'd imagine it was a phone call worth taking, but maybe not.
Yeah, of the guys on the list at this point, I think I would pick Luke Murray. It doesn't fit what I would specifically look for at Boston College, but just a longtime assistant on a team that's won a ton, and maybe he's just been an amazing coach himself, hiding in plain sight. So it's a lot of other guys like John Becker of Vermont, who I felt like should
Yeah,
have gotten a better job for a while, but Vermont is a really good job in the America East. It's the exact opposite of the Boston College situation.
it is. He's a legend at Vermont too. And again, another guy that could have left forever ago and never did for certain reasons that,
Yeah, it seems like there might be some off the court stuff as to why he's still there, which maybe Boston College would benefit from that. But again, it's not a smooth transition.
right. Well, and if you're from Boston College's perspective, you're basically looking at it as how do we get out of the gutter and actually succeed a little bit. And they know they're not going to ignite the fan base immediately. You need somebody who could come in and structurally reorganize in a way that can provide an avenue for success. So that's where I think like a really hardworking rebuilding guy and maybe even a younger guy would be good. That's why Meg Pyle came to mind. I don't think Meg Pyle wants it right away. I think he's enjoying the Fordham project still, but I think that's the mentality. You could dip down a layer lower. Like I don't think Ryan Miller would take that job, but that's the kind of thinking I'm having where you can really kind of redesign and reimagine the place. And Boston's a big area as well with good coaches from the region. You maybe if we can overlap those two, that's where Luke Murray maybe good as well. I just the only thing that concerns me with the Luke Murray is he's used to being at the top of the sport with UConn, where they have a lot of advantages already built into that job. Boston College is quite the opposite, where you're going to have to earn and create any advantage that you gain over time, and nothing will be handed to you at the beginning. And so, that's why I like Division two guys a lot. Like I love Division two guys because in Division two you have a much smaller staff. You have to wear several hats. You have to work your butt off daily to get anywhere in Division two. And if you've succeeded at that, that's the same skill set you want at a place that's essentially the worst job in the league. And so you probably don't have to dip all the way to D2, obviously, if you're BC, but that's the background I'd be looking for if I'm their athletic director.
Yeah, maybe a year from now that could have gone like Dave Klatsky, who was awesome at D3 NYU. He's only been
I
at
love
Florida
him.
a year as an assistant. He probably
I
needed
love
like
him.
3 years at the D1 level to make a jump all the way to Boston College. He might be like a Dartmouth guy this year or something.
Right. Yeah, it could be interesting.
But all right, we have gone probably long enough here. Rocco Miller, we've picked up some new listeners over the last week. So if they do not know of your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, Rocco Miller 8 on X/Twitter, best place to follow along. I'm involved in a lot of different activities, so I can understand getting lost in the other platforms, but that's the easiest. And then bracketeer.org is my website that I own and operate. We have wall-to-wall tournament coverage. We had four people on the road covering different sites in this first weekend. This next weekend, we'll have, I think, three of the four sites covered, including myself in San Jose. And then, of course, the Final Four. I don't know what we're going to do for that. We'll have a couple people covering it, though, and do some articles. And that's actually where scheduling will start for me personally. So I'm a guy who does not ever sleep in May. I quite frankly do not agree with the term because I actually work harder in May than most months during the season with schedule assistance for all 31 leagues. So if you're curious about tracking non-conference schedules and different developments, it's very helpful to be on bracketeer.org checking out the schedule updates. We'll put things up there that are not public yet. And we appreciate everybody's support with the site too. I mean, I know evolving into just myself and to several others has been a fun endeavor, but any support that people want to provide to us, we're really appreciative. There's a button on the site. Just click that and you can support us that way. Pretty straightforward. And then outside of that, Field of 68, we do the mid-major show. I think we'll have one more episode this year. Sadly, we have nobody left to talk about in the
NIT.
NC. Yeah, we'll see if the NIT can drum up some interest. We still have to do our All-American show, so we'll at least have that. And I'm putting my final votes together for it. And of course, bracketology is on Field of 68 for next year. Keep that in mind. And then basket under review. So I'm doing a couple editorials for them each month, and I'm coming up with a few different commissioner interviews that will be kind of the norm throughout the off season. So if you love college basketball all year long, like Tyler and I do, it's a good resource. It's a good resource for all of us because I'm just one of really many talented writers on there. Will Warren, the Three Man Weave, Brian Ralph, Kevin Sweeney. Like we have a loaded crew over there. There's no shortage of great material. They have great game previews on there for these upcoming tournament games. If you're interested, if you want to get into the weeds on schematics, that's what I appreciate the most. So basketunderreview.com is the site for that.
Yeah, Rocco is a great follow during the season, but he is the elite follow as we get into the late spring and early summer for scheduling stuff. So go and follow him. Rocco, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for listening. I'll be back later this week with a full force St. John's Duke preview. But so just keep an eye out at Up the Coast Pod on Twitter on your podcast feeds for that.